Let's see. Oh, yeah. Geo wins. Get rid of your Vodafone cards, everyone. Okay. The hankering after perfection is seen even in the most perfect devotees. So we should never think of being perfect at any stage. Actually, Krishna consciousness is unlimited because Krishna is unlimited. So we do not know at which point the perfection is there. It's like, in one lecture Prabhupada said that Krishna cannot understand even himself. And then Prabhupada said, actually he can understand himself, but the next moment he expands, so he can't even keep up with himself. So you have this concept that whatever it is in spiritual life, it's always growing. So even it's perfect, it expands. So how can perfection be limited? So no matter how much you love Krishna, you can love Krishna more. So you can be more perfect. So there's never the end of perfect. So this is good to know, because a lot of devotees will regret or feel bad that they're lacking in so many ways. But what Prabhupada's saying here is you'll never get to a point where you won't be lacking, because you can always go more. So just get used to it. You'll never be this ideal. But at the same time, as we'll read, Prabhupada's saying there's perfection in that endeavor for perfection. That's the perfection. It's the mentality. Even Krishna himself thinks that he is imperfect to understand Radharani's feelings of devotion. And to understand the devotional feelings of Radharani, he became Lord Chaitanya to worship Krishna in the feelings of Radharani. So transcendental activities are so nice that it is all perfection and still there is no perfect satisfaction. So that's the point that Prabhupada's saying. And we'll read more. Any sincere effort in Krishna consciousness is perfection, but the perfection, you'll never reach perfection in your bhakti because it'll always has room to become more perfect. So, but you're perfect because you're a devotee and you're sincere, but your bhakti can always be more perfect. That is the duty of spiritual life. Please stick to your principles as you are doing now and serve Krishna to your best capacity, and Krishna will give you all protection, undoubtedly. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. Now, we have the first definition of perfection. I'll read that again in case you missed it. Raise your hand if you missed it. Yes. I figured that. Instead of satisfying his own personal material senses, he has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. So I'll tell a story. When I was coming to the temple, the devotees knew very little. And whatever little they knew, they said in every class, and it was the same thing because they only knew so many things. And everything they knew couldn't go past an hour. So every class was just a rearrangement of those like 10 things they knew. So every class was basically the same in different orders, but it was good because I was getting the basics. And so I got it, that I'm not the body, that I'm suffering, and I'm going to become a dog in my next life if I remain a hippie and things like that. But one of the things that dominated that discussion, and also in Prabhupada's Gita when I was first reading it, it dominated the discussion, is everything you do has to be for Krishna's pleasure. And I really got that in my head. So as a student, I'd always think, whatever I had to do, I would think, this is for Krishna's pleasure, even though it wasn't. I mean, it was like, I was just like in a music class and I had to practice my music and I'd go and think, okay, I'm doing this for Krishna. I didn't know what it meant, how I could do that for Krishna. But I just thought I'm supposed to do it for Krishna. And that's what Prabhupada's saying. That's perfection. If you're just thinking, this is for Krishna's pleasure, or you're trying to do something for Krishna's pleasure. That's a definition of perfection, which any of us can achieve even though we're not perfect, and that's good news, right? You can be perfect even though you're not perfect. What a relief. Now, there was never a time that Prabhupada made anybody feel like there was something wrong with them, unless they did something really stupid. But that was rare. But ordinarily, when you were in Prabhupada's presence, he never made you feel like, well, there's something wrong with you because you're not a pure devotee. And actually, he made you feel like there was everything right in you because you're trying to serve Krishna sincerely. That's how he made us feel. So he saw our effort as our perfection. Yes?
Can you repeat that, please?
There was never a time that, at least I personally felt, that Prabhupada ever made us feel like we were imperfect or there was something wrong with us. But he always made us feel like if we're sincerely serving, then there's everything right with us. That was... Now, we may have felt guilty because we weren't serving, but that... I've many times felt guilty that I couldn't serve the way I wanted to, but I always realized it never was coming from Prabhupada, it was just coming from me, or by my mother, I guess, I don't know. Jewish mother, you know, what can I say? So, but even though sometimes I felt guilty because I fell short of what I knew Prabhupada wanted, I understood intellectually it wasn't coming from anything that Prabhupada said. It was just coming from my feeling of not living up to what I thought he wanted. But it was never communicated anyway directly in any class or ever to me. The only thing that was communicated to me was always encouragement. There was never like a letter with saying, well, you know, I've been thinking about you, Mahatma Prabhu, and I think actually you should give up Krishna consciousness because it doesn't seem like, you know, you can really make it. There was never that. The only time Prabhupada would ever say a thing like that is if a person refused to follow him, to follow his instruction. And that was rare that someone didn't want to follow, but if it came to that point, he would just say, you know, what can I do for you? I can't do anything for you. So basically, you're useless. But as long as somebody wanted to follow, there was never a feeling coming from Prabhupada that we couldn't achieve perfection, there was anything wrong with us, and there was everything right. All we had to do was be sincere, and then everything was okay. That's how we felt. So any negative feelings definitely were our own creations. They weren't coming from Prabhupada. He was like the ultimate encourager. And we were having a discussion. This is a side point, but it's really interesting because I'm in a group of devotees who discusses issues that presents the GBC. So one new member came and said, well, what's the policy on gay and lesbian and transgender in ISKCON? Is there a policy? And I said, well, actually there isn't. And then one of the members said something very interesting. He said, we have to realize that the first 3 people that joined ISKCON were all gay. And you wouldn't know that because Prabhupada never said anything negative about them. They were the first 3 devotees were friends and they were gay. Isn't that interesting? And these were like the main people in the very beginning of the movement that Prabhupada was working with and depending on. And he never ever said anything negative other than just encouraging them. So there was never anything negative coming from Prabhupada as long as we were positive, and as long as we wanted to be Krishna conscious, he was always supporting it, encouraging us, pushing us. And then here, Prabhupada saying, if you just try to satisfy Krishna, that's your perfection. So you're all perfect in that sense. We can all be perfect right now, even though we're imperfect. Now here's another interesting point. The more one feels imperfect in Krishna's service, the more he is advancing in Krishna consciousness. Even the topmost devotees feel they are inadequate in their service to the Lord. So it is good to feel inadequate and try harder to please Krishna with better service. But one should never feel, oh, I have seen Krishna, or I am reached perfection. That is not Krishna consciousness. Now here, Prabhupada's taking another angle. He's encouraging us to feel imperfect, which for many of us, feeling imperfect leads to discouragement, right? Or depression. I'm so bad, I'm so imperfect, what's the use? Why try? That's a common mentality, right? Or the mentality, I need to be perfect. If I can't be perfect, what's the use of doing anything? It's either perfection or nothing. A lot of people have that mentality. I knew a devotee, extremely intelligent, extremely qualified, very, very successful before he became a devotee, top of his class. Everything he did, he was number one. And then he came to ISKCON, and he had to do something he never did before, which is control his senses. And especially control the sex desire. These are things we never had to do. So although we're number one in the material world, when you come to ISKCON, you're automatically demoted because you have no practice with that. And there's so many brahmacharis around for years who are good at it. And he couldn't handle this because everything he did was perfect materially. And he ended up leaving because he was uncomfortable not being in first place. It's like, if I can't perfect bhakti, then I might as well leave because I'm used to perfecting everything materially. So that's the ill side of thinking I'm not perfect. And here Prabhupada's giving the humble side. I'm imperfect. This is a positive thing, not a negative thing. And what Prabhupada's saying here, feeling imperfect is a positive thing. Because, why is it positive? Because it becomes the impetus to go further. You know this song, George Harrison wrote a song, maybe someone knows because I had already been a devotee, so I wasn't listening to it. But something about Krishna, I want to see you. Oh, well, that was My Sweet Lord, but there was another song also he wrote. I really want to see you. But anyway, he wrote a song like that, and he went to Prabhupada and showed the song, and Prabhupada said, this is how a devotee thinks. He never thinks, I've seen Krishna. He thinks, I want to see Krishna. I'm not perfect. That's how he thinks. So that's the humility. So that's what Prabhupada's talking about here. That the more I advance, the more I'll feel imperfect, but it won't have a negative impact upon me because it's not a material thinking of imperfection. It's a spiritual thinking. I'm not perfect. That means I'm humble. I have a long way to go. I will try harder. The material side is I give up. The spiritual side is I try harder. I'm inadequate. What does that mean? I'm not a pure devotee. So if I'm inadequate and I'm not pure, what do? Go home and cry? Or try harder? So that's what Prabhupada's saying, that the advanced devotee feels that way, but it becomes an impetus to try harder. And if we take it in the wrong way, it becomes an impetus to give up. Right? Does that make sense? So you're going to see so many things wrong with yourself. I mean, you're not going to see, you have seen. And you will see more as you advance. And so either it's going to become an impetus to work on it and get better, or it's going to discourage you. And you'll think, what's the use? It even becomes more discouraging 50 years from now. Well, let's say, you may not all be alive. All right, let's get realistic here. Okay, let's say 30 years from now, or 40 years from now. When you've been a half century as a devotee, and you still have anarthas that you had 50 years ago, that can be discouraging. Yes? But it can also be encouraging, because then you think, 50 years, when am I going to give this up? Why am I such a fool? So you can turn it around and say, I need to give this up, this is ridiculous. Right? So it can, when am I going to be serious? So every time you see a negative, it can be a positive. When am I going to be more serious? When am I going to give this up? Like, if you have, if you're dealing with something that you were dealing with 20 years ago, naturally you're going to think at some point, when am I going to give this up? Because obviously I haven't. I'm still holding on to it. So it's like, it's a good question. Even if you're a young devotee, it's a good question just to ask yourself, okay, I'm attached to this, so when am I going to give it up? I still haven't given it up. What am I waiting for? Right? I'm waiting for tomorrow, right? When am I going to give it up? Tomorrow! First thing in the morning. Right, yeah. But it's a good question to ask. If we're dealing with something that's getting in the way of our bhakti, then we ask ourselves, okay, this has been going on for a long time, it's still here, this is keeping me away from Krishna, when am I going to give it up? Let's put it in my calendar. Maybe next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm going to give up this anartha. But the reality is that even though it's a problem, it can be a great impetus. If we take it in the right way. So, as I was saying before, Prabhupada never said anything that would depress us. It's just that sometimes we become depressed, but it wasn't that he was saying anything that should have depressed us. He was only saying things that should have encouraged us. But we become depressed because we're impatient. Why is it taking so long? Or because of false ego, we want to be better, or we want to show people we're better. And as Prabhupada explained, he tried to explain so many times, this is just the reality of spiritual life. We're conditioned, it takes a while to become unconditioned, and you just have to be patient. But don't give up your enthusiasm while you're waiting, because that's where you're going to get sidetracked. Okay, I think the problem that Prabhupada addressed with us often was we thought everything was going to happen very fast, right? You know, this one guy joined when I was in Canada, and it was an unusual guy. Well, many unusual people joined. That was 1970. And he said, you know, thinking about 2 months I'll be self-realized. That was, you know, that was the schedule. Most of us thought 6 months to a year. He was a little proud. He was at 2 months. And after 6 months or a year, we realized we're not that much further along than we were a year ago. And so gradually it sets in that this is a slower process than we thought. But I think for some devotees, they just don't accept that reality. It's happening too slow, and in that slowness they become discouraged. And then sometimes they think, everyone else is advancing and there's something wrong with me, and that's not true. Some devotees are good at acting like sadhus. So it seems like they're more advanced than they are, because, you know, we want to look like good devotees because we want to inspire others. And some of us want to look like good devotees so, you know, everybody likes us. But the fact is, if you're a conditioned soul and I'm a conditioned soul, then whatever problem I'm having, you're having, whatever problem you're having, I'm having, it's just a question of degree. It's not that I'm the one unfortunate one that has all these problems. It's not like that. And I've done many, many, many seminars, and we talk about these things, and I can guarantee you, from the top to the bottom, we all have the same problems to one degree or another. And so, this sounds strange, but it's comforting to know how many problems other people have. And I've seen this in the seminars. When even advanced devotees would reveal their problems, the younger devotees would like, you have that problem also? Well, I don't feel so bad. Actually, I feel pretty good. Seriously, because I thought nobody had that problem, or no one had it to the degree that I had. And then I'm hearing even advanced devotee has that problem. When started teaching forgiveness, so many of my godbrothers would call me and say, I have an issue with so-and-so, with so-and-so, with so-and-so, I can't forgive them. These are very advanced devotees. So even on very high levels, we still have issues. And so, once we understand that, then it's easier to be patient and it's easier to be more self-accepting. Okay, this is the reality, we all have these problems, this is just what you have to go through. But it doesn't mean I'm still not perfect, because Prabhupada will define perfection in other ways here. So let's read a little more, it'll become more clear. Actually, Krishna is kind to everyone, but when he sees that a living entity becomes a little serious to make perfection in life, then Krishna takes special care to give such living entity all necessary facilities. Now you have the greatest opportunity to do very nice service to the Lord, because you are now in a foreign country and are helping to pave the way for a very successful Krishna conscious temple in Germany. So continue to take advantage of this opportunity as the Lord has kindly given you, and surely He will bestow all His blessings upon you. So, a devotee doesn't think that I can become perfect. I don't know how to do that, but a devotee thinks I can serve Krishna, and any perfection that I will achieve, He will make happen. That's how a devotee thinks. Because if you think on your own you have to become perfect, you will drive yourself crazy. Because it won't happen. In case you forgot, it's Kali Yuga. Did anyone forget? We're in Kali Yuga. It's like we don't know how, we think we know how bad Kali Yuga is. We don't. We really don't. Most people are not, by Vedic standards, considered human beings. This devotee said, Prabhupada said there are many species of humans. And then he blew everyone's mind by saying, and monkeys are part of the human species. So we're coming from this position of very fallen humans, not really humans. Not by Vedic standards are we human. We're outcasts, much as Yavanas. And then we're given bhakti, which is like, it's not really meant for us. We're not supposed to get it. But Lord Chaitanya broke all the rules. He broke all the rules. I was just talking to a godbrother, and he said in the disciplic line he was in, all the gurus were women. There were no male gurus. He's a Vaishnava, and a conservative Vaishnava. And so this godbrother was saying, how is that? And he said, Lord Chaitanya broke all the rules. He has to break the rules, otherwise we can't do this. So now he breaks the rules, he lets us come in, he gives us the holy name, and Prabhupada says the holy name will do everything. But in the process of doing everything, we're stuck with the fact that we're residents of Kali Yuga with all these weird, crazy samskaras. But we always have to remember, Prabhupada never discouraged us. He encouraged us. He always told us, you can become a pure devotee. In so many lectures, Prabhupada said, in this life you can go back to Godhead. In this life you can see Krishna. In this life you could dance with Krishna. And he's saying that to hippies who 2 weeks ago were, I don't want to say what they were doing, but a few weeks ago they were doing things that human beings shouldn't do, and he's telling them, you can see Krishna in this life. That's the power of the process. So what I find is very important is to put faith in the process rather than become discouraged by the specimen. We're the specimens, right? We become discouraged by looking at ourselves and say, oh, this is not going to work. No, put faith in the process. It doesn't matter who you are. If you take to the process, you'll be perfect. Because what Prabhupada's saying is Krishna will do it. It's not us. So you don't have to worry about being perfect. All you have to do is worry about the process. Just follow the process sincerely. The perfection comes as a byproduct. You don't have to do that. That's good news, right? You do this, you get this. That's how it works. You don't have to try to get this because you just do this, and if you do this, you get this. That's how it works. You don't have to try to be perfect, you just have to try to be sincere and follow Prabhupada's instruction, and then you get this. And that's the saving grace. We have a pure devotee who descended from the spiritual world who promised to take us back to Godhead. He made a deal with Krishna, 16 rounds, 4 rakes, and I'll take you back to Godhead. So what are you worried about? Oh, Prabhu, but I'm so this, I'm so that. Whatever. Prabhupada said, you do this, chant without offense, follow the principles, I'll take you back to Godhead. You do this, you get this. The this you can't get on your own. But you can do this, and he'll give you this. That's how it works. So that way, we don't become discouraged, because if we think I have to do this, then we look at this. That's like climbing Mount Everest. But this is easy, or fairly easy, right? I do this, is not, as they say in Hollywood, not what you know, but who you know. So we know Prabhupada, he's close with Krishna, they're making a deal, and everything's good. Right? So Prabhupada talks about that here. Actually, because you have surrendered to Krishna, you are already perfect. Wow. Turn to the devotee next to you and tell them, Prabhu, you're already perfect. And then you might say, wait a minute, Prabhupada said, because you have surrendered to Krishna, but I haven't surrendered to Krishna. No. As Prabhupada says, chant 16 rounds, follow 4 principles, do service. You're following the order of the Guru, so you're surrendered to Krishna. That's what it means. I was with Prabhupada, and this man, he was our lawyer, he said, Prabhupada, how long does it take to surrender? And Prabhupada said, it takes 1 moment. And then Prabhupada said, if you accept that Krishna is God, I'm a servant, you're surrendered. So, accepting Krishna's instructions is one definition of surrender. Even if you don't perfectly execute, but just that Krishna is God, I'm a servant, this is the process. So, I've often said, I don't know if you've heard this, but when I was 19, I met Prabhupada. It was in December 1969. I met Prabhupada 6 blocks from my home in Los Angeles, because that's where the temple was. And I didn't know he was coming to the temple. And I went to the temple that morning, and they said, Prabhupada is coming to the airport. Do you want to come? So I went, and I got to see Prabhupada. And that was December, like probably end of December, Christmas vacation. And then I often think, if I would have died the next day, I would have still, perhaps, I would say my life was perfect because I saw a pure devotee. Right? Lava matra sadhasanga, sarva siddhi hoy. Isn't that what Shastra says? If you meet a sadhu for a lava matra, that's 1/12 of a second, your life is perfect. So even though I hadn't done much devotional service, but I saw Prabhupada, that's it. Okay, I saw Prabhupada, my life is perfect. No problem. So, if you come in contact with a pure devotee, or you're here in Mayapur, you take prasadam, charanamrita, all these things can be considered that your life is perfect. That's basically what Prabhupada is saying. Because you've surrendered to Krishna, you're already perfect. But it is just like the ocean. We can swim forever and never reach the shore. Similarly, there is no limit to perfection. We may go on improving more and more, and still there is no limit to how much we may please Krishna. Just like for the materialist, there's no limit to how much Maya can kick us. Prabhupada was funny sometimes. I'll read that again. There's no limit to perfection. We may go on improving more and more, and still there's no limit to how much we may please Krishna. Just like for the materialist, there's no limit to how much Maya can kick us, or kick them, yes. Hare Krishna. So, here Prabhupada gives these two definitions. You become a devotee, that's perfection, and that perfection is unlimited. So, you can be perfect and imperfect at the same time by this definition. Or no, perfect, you can be more, you're already perfect, not imperfect, you can be more perfect. Right? And that will be a whole life of perfection. But if we lament that we're not perfect, that's not useful. If someone says to me, I'm not perfect, then I would just say, so what are you going to do about it? That's the only response, right? Otherwise, I'm not perfect just becomes an excuse for not being perfect. Right? Sometimes devotees say, I'm so fallen. But what they really mean is, I'm useless and I don't want to do devotional service. And I need a good excuse for not doing it, and I'm fallen sounds like a good excuse. Right? That's a good one, yeah. Prabhu, I'm so fallen. Well, we didn't see you this morning. Oh, I'm so fallen. How come you didn't finish your rounds? Oh, I'm so fallen. So, I think they don't often realize that they're making an excuse. They actually believe they're so fallen that they can't do these things. So, but the natural response, if you say I'm so fallen, is, well, what are you doing about being so fallen? Are you doing anything? It's like saying I'm so sick. Are you taking any medicine? No, I'm just sick. Isn't it? Yeah. So, Hare Krishna. The only concern of Krishna's devotees is to serve Krishna. Oh, this is a nice one. Okay. So now Prabhupada, he's saying something which appears contradictory, because he's saying you should perfectly serve Krishna. But I have to explain this. The only concern of Krishna's devotees is to serve Krishna to the highest level of perfection in whichever situation Krishna wishes him to remain. So, what does Prabhupada mean here by serving to the highest level of perfection? That sounds like a contradiction, because how can you serve to the highest level of perfection if you're not perfect? What does Prabhupada mean? He means to try your best, to serve your best. That's what he means, serve to the highest level. In other words, do as best you can do. And then try to improve and do the best service you can do. So he's not defining an absolute standard of perfection. He's just saying try as best you can. That's your perfection. That's the important thing. Because obviously, we can't control outcomes. We can only control efforts, endeavor, right? That's what we have control. We have control of the effort, and we have control of the mood. But we don't have control of the outcome. That's why Krishna tells Arjuna, be detached, because you don't know what the outcome is. So if you're looking for perfection in the outcome, it may or it may not come. If you're looking for perfection in the effort, then that you can control. And that's what Prabhupada's saying. And that's why Prabhupada encouraged us, because he saw that we were trying. You know, we were really a motley crew. For those of you who don't know what that means, how do we translate that, motley crew? We were unusual and kitschy. Well, I wanted to say more, we were like unusual, or not your ideal candidates for bhakti. And not even ideal candidates for doing things materially well, not all of us. You know, young, not experienced, not that smart, and still, you know, recuperating from years of drugs and other sinful activities. But Prabhupada saw that we were sincere, and that inspired him, that we could take over the world really, as Prabhupada said, with his monkey soldiers. So monkey soldiers aren't that capable, right? Yeah. Let's conquer the world with monkeys. So how do you conquer the world with monkey soldiers? It's because Prabhupada saw the sincerity of the devotees. And I mean, just try to think of this. Prabhupada was talking about how Krishna consciousness is going to take over the world. And we're looking at ourselves and we're looking around. He was not talking about me. Is he talking about you? I don't think he's talking about me. Like how we're going to do this. Who's he talking about? But Prabhupada seeing, here are sincere devotees, and that Krishna is going to work through them. And Krishna is going to make them do things that they don't even know they can do. So they're imperfect, they know they're imperfect, but I see that they're sincere, and they don't realize how powerful this process is, and they don't realize how Krishna will empower them, because they're just looking at their disqualification materially. But I know how the process works, and I know if they're sincere, Krishna will empower them, because everything that's happening to spread this movement is happening under the internal potency, and they don't even understand that potency. They're just looking at their material ability and thinking, I can't do this, right? But Prabhupada's seeing it differently. And then Prabhupada's saying, this holy name is so powerful, it can purify anyone. And we're thinking, I'll never be purified. So we have these like two different perspectives. Prabhupada's seeing the sincerity and the power of the process, and we're feeling the imperfection and like, how can we do this? So that's why he put so much energy into us. Otherwise, you could think that Prabhupada, came there, set up 26th Avenue, walked in the back door, looked at all the people and said, oh my God, you're useless. And walk out the back door and, call up the travel agent and say, get me out of here. Which I think some of his godbrothers may have done. Or perhaps we could be certain some of them would have just looked at that and said, these people are useless. And what's the point? So that's my feeling. I don't know if you saw this video, somehow or other by Krishna's mercy, someone showed me this video like 20 years ago. And it's me getting Brahmin initiation and Prabhupada putting on my thread when I was 20 years old. I was like, oh my God, there it is, my initiation. And Prabhupada was smiling. So Yadavar Prabhu asked me to comment. He said, why is Prabhupada smiling? And I was thinking that, this was just my realization, I was thinking that Prabhupada is making Brahmins, and here's another Brahmin, and the Brahmins are going to spread Krishna consciousness. And he was confident in the process, if we were sincere, we could become Brahmins and actually change the world. Not Indian Brahmins, Malechas who become Brahmins, they're going to change the world. And Prabhupada's giving me the thread and he's smiling like, and who am I? That was only 8 months after I'd been a devotee. So 8 months before that, I was not a great sadhu. And here Prabhupada's giving me a Brahmin thread and smiling, and kind of like saying, go out, conquer the world for Krishna. So we're fortunate that he saw that way. And so we have to balance what Prabhupada's saying here. We don't think we're perfect, and we obviously think we have so many imperfections, but our lives are perfect because we're Krishna conscious. And we just have to be kind of happy to be imperfect for the time being. When you take prasadam and it's really good, what are you thinking about? Thinking about how good the prasadam is, right? Yesterday yesterday? 2 days ago? It was yesterday. No. Oh, at our house, yeah. But with that big feast, Radhika Prasads, we had this like amazing prasadam, and Just when you think your plate's full, they come around with like 3 more preps. Each one better than the last, that kind of feast. So what are you thinking when you're taking prasadam? Especially when it's good. You're thinking how good it is, right? Oh, this is so good, and this is better than that one, and oh my God, did you taste this? And then you're just talking to your friends and laughing and joking and like that, right? Nobody's thinking while they're taking this delicious prasadam, oh, I'm so imperfect. I'm just like, I'm never going to make it. Nobody thinks that way. So, when Prabhupada was with us, we were so happy to be engaged in devotional service. It was just, this very little movement was growing, so to be part of that was just amazing to watch it grow. And it was growing very fast. And we used to think if someone came to the Sunday feast and they didn't stay and live in the temple, something was wrong with their brain. It was like that. It was like, this is like, why did he leave? What's wrong with that guy? Is his brain not working? No, he'll be back tomorrow for sure. So it was expanding so rapidly, and it was so amazing that nobody was feeling like, well, there's something wrong with me, or I'm not a good devotee, or this or that. We didn't feel that way. We were just excited about what was going on. Just like you're excited about good prasadam. It was the same thing. So this idea that I'm imperfect and it's like a horror story, and my life is the horror story, and I'm just walking into walls, it's not how we felt. We were in the moment relishing the process of Krishna consciousness. That's where the focus was, relishing, spreading it. We had so many programs to spread it. And so many people were coming. Like the first Rath Yatra I went to, there were about 10,000 hippies, and all 10,000 were dancing in the festival. And after the festival, after we took prasadam, there was about 3,000, and I was in the back of the hall of the 3,000, and Prabhupada was there, and there was kirtan. And I could see everybody, and every single person was jumping up and down. So that's what we were living through, these kinds of things, these kinds of festivals. So there wasn't this like, I'm so imperfect, and I'll never be perfect, and I've got so many problems. We were just in the moment relishing Krishna consciousness. And we could see that that's what Prabhupada wanted. He didn't want us sitting around lamenting. He wanted us to be happy. And he'd always ask us, are you happy? He didn't come in and say, are you all lamenting? Are you all feeling you're imperfect and hankering, He would say, are you happy? And people would come to Prabhupada, and people would come to Prabhupada, and he would, like devotees would come, and he would ask them the question, are you happy in Krishna consciousness? And then they would say, yes, Prabhupada, thank you, I'm so happy. I used to be so miserable, now I'm so happy. That made Prabhupada happy, to know that people who were coming to Krishna consciousness were happy. That was like his ultimate happiness. He didn't want to hear that, oh no, I came to Krishna consciousness, now I'm just like full of guilt, and just like never going to be perfect. That was not the mood. No one told Prabhupada that. The mood was, wow, prasadam is great, kirtan is great, preaching is great, everything is great. That was the mood. And so because of that, it didn't matter where we were in our evolution, because wherever we were, it was blissful. Right? Does prasadam taste good to new devotees? Yes? Yeah. Okay. It does, right? If you're a new devotee, it still tastes good. Yeah? A new devotee is full of faults, full of imperfections. Prasadam still tastes good. And sometimes the new devotees, they dance more than the old devotees in the kirtan, right? So the process of Krishna consciousness is relishable on any level, no matter what's wrong with you, no matter how long you've been a devotee. And that's what Prabhupada encouraged. That's what made him happy. So, we could say more. We'll do more tomorrow. But I always like questions. Give some time for questions, if you have any. Yes?
Thank you for the talk, Gurudev. So you made this distinction between a material sense of inadequacy and a spiritual sense of inadequacy. And the material one can ruin your spiritual life,
yes.
And the other one, the spiritual one, keeps you going.
Yes.
So I think, to me, it feels like the difference between the two is, or when you have a more spiritual sense, is when, even though you know you're imperfect, you still have a sense of Krishna and the Guru accepting your service.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe that's sometimes a missing ingredient. Maybe we're not aware of how we're still accepted. So we have some sort of a fear of being abandoned or rejected. And maybe we can even say we haven't made the effort to meet the right devotees who give us that encouragement and that acceptance.
Yeah.
And of course, we should also remember ourselves to always be like that towards those who are junior to us. So I feel like that's the missing ingredient.
Yeah, and it's good to know you'll never be rejected unless you reject. You can't be rejected by Guru and Krishna unless you reject them. And even if you reject them, usually they'll run after you. So to be rejected means you have to be determined to be rejected. It's just like, you know that story, some devotee sold one little magazine and Bhaktisiddhanta appreciated so much. So we see that with Prabhupada, that whatever we did, he appreciated. And so many times he said, I couldn't spread this movement without you. I couldn't do this alone. And he would sincerely thank us. Of course, we felt, no, it's all because of you. But the practical reality was he needed boots on the ground. And he appreciated that. Even though it was all his mercy that we could do it. So he always made that point, that Krishna will accept any sincere service, no matter how insignificant. And so the idea of not feeling accepted is a material idea. It's not a philosophical idea, because you can't, it's not established in our philosophy that that's true. It's just, our own feeling that, well, maybe I'm not appreciated or loved or accepted because I'm not perfect. But Krishna, the thing is, Krishna and the spiritual master don't look at us like we look at ourselves. Or they don't look at us like your mother looked at you, if she looked at you that way. Like if your mother was unaccepting, don't think that that's how Krishna looks at you. He doesn't. And what does the Shastra say? That a pure devotee, both a pure devotee and Krishna, they only see the good, they don't see the bad. So that's encouraging. So if that's true, why would we ever think otherwise? But that's, that's our own baggage. It's not actually the philosophy. So sometimes when our own baggage is getting in the way, we have to go back to the philosophy and say, well, what does the philosophy say? Because what I'm thinking is different from what the philosophy says. Like I was saying, sometimes I would feel that I failed Prabhupada, I would feel guilty, but it was never that he ever told me anything that would make me feel guilty. Or never said anything in his books which was intended to make us feel guilty. It may make me feel guilty because I'm not doing it. But it's, even if we failed, Prabhupada would never make us feel like a failure. That just is not how he dealt with us. You know that story. It's such an interesting story. Probably most of you have heard it. One of our godbrothers was married and he wanted to divorce and remarry, and Prabhupada said, okay. So Shruti Kirti asked him, why did you say okay? It's against our principles. Prabhupada said, I could tell from his letter he was going to do it, and so I didn't want to tell him not to do it. And then that devotee would have to live with this his whole life, that I'm disobeying my guru. So Prabhupada said, okay. So Prabhupada was very careful, because the higher principle was to keep that person in Krishna consciousness. So staying together with his wife is dharma, it's morality. But if Prabhupada said no and he did it, he'd be disobeying the Guru. So that's a much worse offense. So better let him follow the Guru. Commit this adharmic act, but do the higher dharmic act, so-called dharmic, of following the Guru. So that's an example how Prabhupada even made adjustments to encourage us. And then there were so many divorces, and Prabhupada would not bless any marriages. In the beginning, he would bless marriages. He said, I don't want anything to do with it. It's your responsibility. So it wasn't pro, it wasn't con, it's just you deal with it. So a lot of things were like that. And any service you did, well, no matter how insignificant, Prabhupada would appreciate it. Always. So I think it's important to know that. And Krishna also. And if you make some sacrifice, double appreciation. If you ever have to undergo difficulty in your service and you don't like difficulty, just think bonus points, overtime, special mercy, difficulty. It's part of the, if I try to avoid difficulty, then I'm avoiding getting so much mercy. So if I have to do my service, sometimes it's difficult, but if I'm willing to accept it, and then Krishna always comes to rescue us. I've been in so many difficult situations, and I think Krishna's telling me, so you depend on me now? Do you have faith in me now? Well, kind of, maybe, but are you sure you're going to help me this time? So he wants to see. So you go through some difficulty, you depend on Krishna. And Krishna goes, yes, my man. I'm there for you. Right? So a lot of, one of the reasons I'm interested in this topic is because your question exactly clarifies the point. There's the philosophy and then there's us. And we may not always think philosophically, we may think more in terms of our conditioning. So, if my guru doesn't write me 10 letters a month, I think he must hate me. Right? Something like that, which has nothing to do with it. Right? So that's our problem, our baggage. But the philosophy is anything you do in Krishna's service, Krishna is pleased. Prabhupada is pleased. Guru is pleased. Yes, Gopal.
So the mentality you're describing is diametrically opposed to everything that society tells us today. Even within the society of devotees, when you first meet someone, the normal pleasantries are there, and someone will ask, "What do you do?" As if that were a measure of someone's worth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. That's part of that's one of the main reasons we have this problem. Because society's judging us based on accomplishment. And bhakti is about mood and devotion. And some devotees will accomplish a lot, not necessarily because they're more advanced, it's just that they have abilities. And some devotees will be very advanced and won't accomplish as much. And if we're smart, we won't allow people to evaluate us. This is a big problem. You see, the problem is not what other people think of you. The problem is what you think of yourself. So if other people don't think well of you, and then you allow yourself to not think well of yourself, you're in trouble. But if someone doesn't think well of you and you just think, whatever, who cares what he says, and you think of yourself in terms of what we're discussing, then you're fine. So that's the problem. Or other people, society, values, position, I tell people, because of this, when I meet people, when I lecture, I like to tell them I'm a UDO. And I go, what's a UDO? I said, it's a university dropout. And the reason I like to say it, because they're all looking at me in terms of what degrees do you have? And I say, I don't have any. And I say, neither does Bill Gates. Neither does Steve Jobs. Neither does Mark Zuckerberg. They're all UDOs. And they all did it after me. They were following my footsteps. And then I tell them, in my generation, the hippie generation, everyone who stayed in school was considered unenlightened, and everyone who dropped out was considered enlightened. But because why would you stay in school? Because it's just teaching you how to make money. So I try to flip it around because of this conditioning of society that everybody's being thrown around by. Who am I? Yeah. So that's the whole point. What you think of yourself, that's going to make you or break you, not what other people think of you. What other people think of you only affects you if you allow it to affect you. Oh, this is what people think of me, oh, I can't face the world. Or this is what people think of me, so what? I know who I am. My position is not important. Yes?
Isn't it also important, though, to see what others think of us as a point of self-reflection?
It is, but it depends who the others are and whether they're on Facebook or not. Are they your friends or are they your enemies? Because sometimes those who are your enemies on Facebook, they haven't the faintest idea who you are and what you do. And they've never talked to the people that know you. They just, hang in circles of people who hate anybody who doesn't believe what they believe, so they shoot you down. And so, yeah, you can understand why you may be doing something that makes them think that way, but if it's not justified, then it's just going to disturb you. If it's justifiable, yeah, for sure. We should be concerned. But I would think nowadays, in the majority of cases, the criticism is not coming from well-wishers. Yes?
One thing about social media and the internet, is that all the communication that's available isn't there. Is what you were saying.
The body language?
Yeah.
Yeah, the body language, yeah.
So how can you possibly judge yourself based on the tiny percentage of communication they're observing from you?
Yeah, or they see a picture. And if someone has a negative view of you, everything you do is going to be seen as negative. So you're helping devotees, you're serving, they go, oh, he just does that for name and fame. But the point is that really it's autobiographical, because they're saying, well, if I was in that situation, I'd probably be doing it for name and fame. So they don't realize they're actually exposing themselves. By criticizing you, they're just saying, well, if I was in that situation, I'd be doing it for name and fame and money. So he must be doing it for name and fame and money. But they don't realize they're saying it. So it's, to someone who knows, they're just embarrassing themselves. Anyway, it's only listen to those who can actually help you. And those who want to pull you down, why listen to them? And if those who are pulling you down were your mother and father, you just forget it, block that out also, because that's, it's not helping you. Prabhupada once said, when making a decision about anything, you want to see, is this going to help me or is this going to hurt me in my spiritual life? He said, how do you evaluate what's right and wrong, whether to go left or right, what to do and not to do? Ask yourself, is it going to help my Krishna consciousness? So is listening to this person going to help me? Maybe it will, but maybe it won't. And if it won't, why should I give heed to it or attention to it? Well, to speak of fight back, that's even worse. Like, you have time to fight back, right? Anything else? Yes?
I'm still wondering about perfection. My friend, she left just 2 days ago, her body, and she tried to chant when she was conscious, but in the last stage when she left, she couldn't chant anymore proper. Her conscious was diluted with morphine. And I touched her feet before she got burned, like in the hospital still, and her feet was like stiff.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of perfection? I mean, this ponders all the time in my mind. Like you said, it's so easy. We just need to please Krishna, but it's not so easy to please Krishna all the time. It's a challenge.
No, it's easy. Prabhupada said, if you dedicate your life to serving Krishna, then even at the time of death, if you forget Krishna, he'll remember you. So Prabhupada said over and over again, give your life to service and Krishna will take care of you. And so we have that faith, that it's not only our effort, but Prabhupada made the promise, and so we, based on that promise, we give our life with faith that we don't have to worry, and He'll come and take us. And we have so many examples of this. It's not even theoretical. We have examples of God brothers completely left Krishna consciousness, became drug addicts, and just fallen in very various ways, and Prabhupada came to them when they were leaving their body because of the service they did. And whenever a devotee had fallen down, like a sannyasi, and come back, and they said, Prabhupada, will you accept me? He said, of course I will. He said, I never forget the service anyone renders. And so that's Krishna's nature also. So that's our faith. If you're depending on your own perfection, yeah, that's always going to be lacking. But we're not depending on our own perfection. We're putting our faith in Prabhupada's words and promises, that if I do this, I'll be taken care of. And even if she didn't go back to Godhead, she'll be in a good position in her next life. And we don't know, right? We can't make an assumption.
But she had the best conditions, you know, she was in Mayapur, she was surrounded by
Yeah.
everybody did kirtan, and it was like amazing association there.
Yes. You ask any of my godbrothers who became gurus, none of them will say, I'm qualified. They will say, Prabhupada asked me to do it, and with my faith in him and his empowerment, I did it. And nobody even told them how to do it. There's no instruction. This is how you do it. So it was faith in the order that this is what he wants me to do, or become a GBC or a temple president or any of these things. That this is what he wants me to do, so I'll do it. I was temple president. I was only a devotee 8 months. What did I know? And so many people became devotees, and we opened up another temple, and so much happened. But it wasn't because of me, but with our faith. I mean, if you look at Prabhupada's Leela, it reads as a movie. It doesn't read as non-fiction. It reads as fiction. So there's so many things we can't see that are going on, and that were going on. Like Jamuna tells a story. She was walking with Prabhupada, and there was dew on the grass, and there were no footprints. Prabhupada, there's no footprints. Someday you'll understand. And once at the airport, Prabhupada was walking, and a devotee saw he wasn't touching the ground. And he turned to the other devotee and said, did you see that? I said, yeah, I saw that. So Prabhupada was very expert at not showing his transcendental nature too much, because he didn't want to attract people who had the wrong motives. But what he was doing and who he was not ordinary. And then once Prabhupada, he was with his disciples, and he said, you were all sent by my spiritual master. You were all devotees in your last life. Like, this was all supposed to happen. I mean, growing up in that era, you know, if you read the stories of how people joined in the 60s and 70s, every story reads, I was reading spiritual books, I was looking for a guru, I was meditating, I needed to know the truth. Like, you know, hundreds, thousands of young people like that. You know, what was going on? Krishna was sending all these devotees. Why are they thinking that way? I need to find a guru. You know, I was 14 years old, I was reading Bhagavad Gita. No one even heard of Bhagavad Gita and they're reading it. I was, you know, studying Sanskrit when I was 16, you know, 1966, you know. I haven't even heard of Sanskrit. So they're all devotees, you know. They were all just, you know. And then they meet Prabhupada, and this one devotee told the story. He said, I hitchhiked with the devotees to go to a concert, and on the way, the devotees preached to me and said, hey, we're going to distribute books. You want to help us? I said, okay. He distributed books all the time, never even went in the concert, went back, and he's still distributing books today. He hasn't stopped. So when you hear these stories, and there are many of the stories like that, you understand this is not ordinary Leela. What Prabhupada was doing is not ordinary. So this whole generation of disciples of Prabhupada, we felt totally unqualified. There was no movement, there were no senior devotees, it was just us, and it was Prabhupada's words, and we had faith in those words. If we just do this, everything will happen, everything will go well. We'll go back to Godhead, the movement will spread. That's how we thought. And then when Prabhupada said become guru, same thing. I'm not qualified, but he wants us to do that. Chant 16, you know, we could do so many things to purify ourselves. Prabhupada said, go, do this, do this, do this, open temples, preach, distribute books, do this. So we say, okay, with faith. So, one time there was so much trouble in Mumbai, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there and he was dealing with it all, and he said, Prabhupada, I'm so agitated, I can't even chant my rounds. Prabhupada said, me too. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj saying, I have no time to read, and he just said, Prabhupada said, just do this. Mahaprabhu will take you back to Godhead. So Prabhupada did so many things like that. So then we thought, okay, we'll dedicate ourselves to this. And we're not going to worry, am I going back to Godhead or not, or thinking of Krishna. We know, Prabhupada, like I said, we do this, he takes care of that. That's our faith. So we should have that faith. So it's getting late. We'll
So easy.
just do it. Don't be mental. So just follow Nike's mantra. So we're going to meet here tomorrow at 7 again. 6. And if any of you want to come, I'm going to be doing a class with the Russian devotees in the community hall at 12:30, and then kirtan. And then I was thinking Monday to go to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. So Monday morning, we're going on morning walk, so if you want to go, we'll go 5:15 from the Panchatattva entrance. We'll go over to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. We'll just walk in the morning, take the boat. You're all welcome to come, or any morning you want to come. We have prasadam from...
When you are talking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, we met Yadupati Prabhu, and he gave